After learning about different type of variables and being able to print them, now we're going to read the values of these variables from the input or from the keyboard. As I said, we're going to learn about the scanner class in more detail later, but for now, that's how we're defining an object in order to read something from the keyboard with the System.in as a parameter. I'm going to read the value for the number 1, which means that I'm going to change the value of number 1 from 5 to maybe something else. I can read number 5 as well, but we're going to try something else. So to read or assign a value to a variable, we need to write the name of the variable first, which is in this case num1, and then we're using the equal sign. As I mentioned, it is an assignment operator, and on the right side I'm going to use the kb object or variable in order to read something from the keyboard. So kb, and then I'm using the dot. As I said, we're going to talk about these operators later. So that's how Java works. We need to ignore some part of like the complexity for now in order to learn something before we actually learn the use or how these dot operators or some other things work. So because number 1 is an integer, I'm going to call or use something called next integer. So kb.nextInt, as you see, is the one that I'm going to use in order to read an integer from the keyboard. And as you see here on the right side of these, like the pop-up window, it says int, which means that the thing that I'm going to read from the keyboard will be an integer. As also we see, that's the name of the method as well. So kb next integer, and then I'm going to read the value of number 1. So I'm going to add some comment, read number 1's value from the keyboard. I'm going to do the same thing for other variables. Because number 2 is a variable of type double, this time I'm going to use another method, which is next double. So here, and don't forget to put a semicolon, that's to end a statement. So number 2 will be a double, so I'm going to read a double. So the third one, the number 3, which is a float, so I'm going to call the next float, and I'm going to read the float number from the keyboard. For now, I'm going to ignore reading a character from the keyboard. That's going to be the topic of our next video. But let's also have the truth and f, reading them from the keyboard. So I'm going to write truth will be equal to kb, and then here we have the next boolean. As you see, it just popped up automatically for me, and as you see here on the right side, it says the boolean will be the actual value. Same thing for f, which was another boolean variable. So I'm going to write kb dot next boolean, and it's going to read these values. So although I have written all these statements after each other, and it seems okay, but we all the time trying to add spices to our code. We want to write a program that is understandable for every user, and by user we mean any person that runs our program or works with our program. So here there are a bunch of the statements to read the some inputs or some values, but honestly the user doesn't have any idea that what they were supposed to do. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add some spices. I'm going to decorate my code or prompting the user to actually enter these values. So I'm going to again use the System.out println, which is used in order to print something on the keyboard. So here is just a message, for example, enter number 1. So I'm going to read enter number 1. Actually, instead of println, I'm going to use print here. Why print here and why not println? When what's the difference between println and a print method? So the println method prints whatever it comes inside a pair of parentheses, and it goes to the next new line. So the next thing they're going to be printed will be add a new line. When I say print is going to only print these things, and it's going to stay at the very end of the line. So when I say print number 1, and then I say kb.next integer, the number that I enter will be at the same line that I said enter number 1. For the next number, which is number 2, I'm going to use System.out println so you can see the difference between println and print in a more clear way. So here I'm saying that enter number 2, and let's also use the System.out println for number 3 and other variable that we have here. Because again, these messages are strings or a sequence of characters. I'm putting them inside a pair of double quotations. So here is enter number 3. And finally here, I'm going to have enter truth. And finally, the last one, System.out print so these are my 5 variables. So let's run our program one more time and see that what's going to happen.